We have got ourselves a fun snake draft lined up for week number 10 because we've got some good games on this slate. We got a lot of good running backs on this slate, some solid wide receivers. There is a lot to break down. We're going to go through a snake draft live on air and then take your questions to get you set for what should be a delightful Sunday in the NFL. Welcome on into the snake draft live here on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter channels. My name is Jim Sannes. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberfire.com, joined here as always by Brandon Gdula and JJ Zachariason. JJ, of course, is the editor-in-chief of Number Fire at FanDuel, the host of the Late Round podcast. JJ, week 10 is shaping up to be a dandy. How are you doing today?
Week 10 looks pretty insane. It's kind of tough, especially from like a salary cap standpoint, to really like know what I haven't dug in enough on the salary cap side as much as you guys have. Yeah. I do want to say though, last week with our snake draft, I was looking so good after the early games, like so good. I thought I was a lock to win. And then I stacked and it was a regret. Like I regretted the moves to some degree, like right after I made the picks, and we talked about it on the show. But I had the Tyreek Mahomes stack, and I brought it back with Aaron Jones, and it did absolutely nothing, and I lost because of that. Never again, Patrick Mahomes.
But what that did was maintain the pattern. The pattern is it did. JJ, me, Brandon, I won last week, which means that Brandon Gdula, managing editor of numberfire.com, you're guaranteed to win this week, bud. So, congrats in advance, I guess.
Boy, I wish it was as simple as that. This week is loaded with great picks from top to bottom. I don't think there's a whole lot of leverage from any particular draft position today. So, I mean, it always comes down to this, with JJ and the Mahomes, Tyreek stack, like good plays don't always work out. So it's going to come down to just which of these amazing plays actually pan out. But, I wish it was kind of a guarantee, but it doesn't really feel that way because these lineups should put up points this week.
Yep, they should, and it's going to be a delight. The way things work, if you have not watched a snake draft before, is we will do a snake draft live on air between the three of us and see who comes out on top, talk about our lineups quickly, and then take your questions no matter where you're watching. We can take questions from Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, or Twitter. Get those questions in now. We'll circle back to them later on after we do the snake draft to get you set for this week. But first, before we get into the snake draft, I did want to talk broadly about this slate because JJ, Brandon and I had a chance to talk yesterday on the Heat Check about our favorite plays. And I think one of the bigger dilemmas is the value plays are great. We like the value plays for sure, but I'm conflicted on how to prioritize the high salaried running backs in the salary cap format. We've got Najee Harris, Jonathan Taylor. We got Christian McCaffrey back at likely a full workload this week. Got Eckler, Dalvin Cook is there as well. And all those guys grade out well. It's tough for salary cap, but those are the guys we're deciding on first in the snake draft. So what's your view of the top end of the running back pool for this week?
Yeah, I mean, so it's kind of hard for me to not put Jonathan Taylor 101 right now, given what he's doing. And the nice part about Taylor is, if you look at his splits with Nyheim Hines, because Nyheim Hines is always the guy that you have to worry about in that backfield. If you look at his splits with Nyheim Hines, the correlation is there for when Indianapolis does well or is a favorite or wins the game. Jonathan Taylor not only just performs better because of positive game scripts, but he's also running more routes in that backfield because Indianapolis isn't throwing their third down back onto the field. And we've seen that, but part of the reason why Taylor has blown up the way he has over the last month and a half, 2 months, is because Indianapolis started out so cold and they weren't playing very well, but then they started playing a lot better as a team and as a unit. And that is huge and massive for Jonathan Taylor. And then you associate that at home, massive favorites, beatable defense. It's just hard for me to not love Jonathan Taylor. And I think that if you want to utilize and use the fact that Taylor has shown that crazy ceiling a little bit more than Najee Harris has, I think that could be utilized as the tiebreaker between those two guys, because I have Harris second. And then, I don't think Christian McCaffrey is the lock as the RB3. I think you can make the argument for sure, but I do think that Dalvin and Austin Eckler, because of the game environment there, I think that they're right there with Christian McCaffrey. I think those are the top five, and just like raw output, the way you would view them. It's not like the, cost savings is like so dramatic. But that's who my top five are for sure. I think that, I can understand if someone sees McCaffrey as like the clear 103. But I really do like Austin Eckler and Dalvin Cook both good matchups in a game that could shoot out. I just think there's a little bit more upside than what we're going to see from CMC.
Yeah, I think that that's the key for me when I decided to rank Najee first for cash games, Taylor first for tournaments, was that upside. Because the way the routes generating upside are yardage and touchdowns. Both those have favored Taylor for the most part this year. So I think that I'd agree with that. For tournaments, I want JT. Let's talk to Brandon here. The value plays have crystallized more. It is now confirmed that Nick Chubb and Demetric Felton will not play for this week. So we know that Dearness Johnson will be there. Looks like Alvin Kamara is going to sit as well, which puts Mark Ingram in the discussion. James Conner at 7,000 might have Kyler Murray now. He's a game time call, which is better than I thought it might be. So that's an encouraging thing too. Brandon, Connor 7,000. Dearness is $5,400. Ingram is 55. For a salary cap format, where do you lean between those three?
I'm going to put Dearness Johnson number one pretty easily for me. When we saw him in week 7 get the start, just really good data for him. Good production, 146 rushing yards on his 22 carries, 69% snap rate, 44% route rate with 2 targets. And that was with Felton playing, who's more of the receiving back. So I think that he's the clear top value back of the week. And then as for the other two, I think I'm still going to go with James Conner over Mark Ingram. We did see Ingram get 5 targets last week, so he's got 7 targets in 2 games with the Saints. We've seen him kind of churn out like a 30-40% snap rate, even with Alvin Kamara playing. So we know that he's got somewhat of a role before Kamara got hurt. So it's not like we're just projecting him to take on some role that we haven't seen from him.
Right.
That being said, it's really hard to go away from James Conner based on what we saw from him last week. They were throwing him designed screens, which could go away if they get Kyler Murray back, but Murray's not going to be 100%. So maybe they just keep going to him. And, we talked about this yesterday and in Monday with James Conner, not historically the biggest film fan of James Conner, but the way he looked last week, really hard to knock that. So I'm going to rank them Johnson, Conner, and Ingram for me, but all are very much in play.
I would do the same. And I'd also say that all three are at least considerations for the snake draft. If we get to, 9 running backs, I could see them being inside the top 9, might not get there, but they're at least considerations for sure. So let's do it. Let's get into the snake draft here for week number 10. JJ, get yourself entered and let's get this puppy underway.
I got the 101
underway. Okay.
Brandon with the, you know what? It's funny. We've gone in this order of me, Jim, then Brandon winning. And I think all 3 of us agreed that the best spot was probably the 103 in this draft because maybe Brandon seems to disagree, but he got the 103 in this draft.
See, Brandon retroactively will change the argument to be the one that he got was the worst one. So
no. I would have said this before if you guys had asked.
Absolutely. Why would I
Jonathan Taylor, Najee Harris are a tier above everybody else this week. I think there are a lot of other running backs in the conversation for the 103, but I think that every one of us would say that the first 2 picks are in their own tier this week.
Well, Number Fire disagrees because they've got McCaffrey above Jonathan Taylor from a projection perspective. And
guess what, boys? Guess what?
Uh-oh.
I'm still going Jonathan Taylor.
Dearness Johnson 1.01.
There we go.
Okay, so he goes JT, which means I'll take Najee. Was it pretty definitive for you, JJ, to go JT over Najee there?
Yeah, I want some ceiling. Najee's apparently not on the injury report, but he was banged up yesterday. I just the Steelers scare me offensively. They're just not great. And that can also be used as a tiebreaker. I just think Taylor's in a better spot.
Okay, so Brandon, you've got 3 and 4. What you thinking here?
I think I'm just gonna go with the game stack.
Okay,
this feels feels so wrong passing up to Christian McCaffrey based on what we saw from him last week.
Right.
I feel like I'm gonna regret clicking on Austin Eckler here. So I'm gonna let the clock bleed out and do the coin flip in my head and see which one I really want. But
feel it out.
I think I can't pass up the game stack appeal here. So I'm gonna go with Eckler.
That's what I would have done.
And honestly, it puts me in a tight spot because I'm deciding, do I go with Christian McCaffrey or Devontae Adams? And I think that's an actual conversation where I could go realistically with either one. Pretty sure Rodgers will get cleared, so I'm not really worried about that. but I think I need to go McCaffrey here just because the workload. I hate that offense so much, but I think I had to go McCaffrey there. It was a tough one though. I
think Jimbo cut out a little bit there. So I went with there we go. You're back. Oh, maybe not. All right. I went with Devontae Adams with the next pick. You had Jim taking Christian McCaffrey. I went Devontae Adams with the next one. I think that was relatively obvious. Now I'm between two running backs, but I am going to go with Zeke with my next pick, who's in a good spot. Huge implied team total for that Dallas Cowboys offense this week. And you can't really go wrong with Elliott and his ground game workload. Jim ends up getting Mike Evans. Jim, you back?
Yeah, I was able to pick Mike Evans. My other computer's internet's been fine. For whatever reason, the one that I'm on over here is the one that bugged out. But I was able to.
Oh no! All right, we're losing Jim. I feel like I'm going to take the workload here with James Conner. As my flex here, I feel really good with the three running backs I get. And then with Russell Wilson back, presumably 100%, near 100%, I'm going to try to buy some time for Jim here with grinding out the clock.
I'm in and out.
All right, you're good? Okay. DK Metcalf didn't practice on Thursday, but that seems like it was by design. So I pretty locked into Metcalf here.
Okay. So you went with Connor and Metcalf, which means I'm left potentially looking at a wide receiver. Or I could go DeAndre Swift. Actually, I'd probably just go Swift with no Jamal Williams. We'll do that.
That's surprising. I didn't think you'd be that high on him based on the. I know in the salary cap format it's a bit different, but I mean his salary's low.
But it's really hard right now at wide receiver, and I'm in a position where I have to take one next. But here's where I'm going first. I am taking Leonard Fournette with my next pick at the running back position, and then I don't really know what to do at wide receiver right now. I might honestly do what we were talking about a little bit briefly before the show because I did get Zeke. Yes, I did get Zeke.
And Cordarrelle's a receiver in this.
I'm going to stack that. So I'm going to go with Cordarrelle Patterson as a receiver in this format.
Okay. I like that. So I've got a lot of bad offenses here, which is disappointing, but let's add one more and go down with the Deontay Johnson and just get the 17 targets that he is bound to get. Means I have two Steelers, which is never a great feeling, but also it means I'm getting, 20 carries and probably 25 combined targets. I'll take that for sure. On to Brandon. What you thinking here?
Kind of surprised. I thought you guys might go for Dak.
Yeah, I considered it.
I think the separation's pretty minimal. That's the reason that I didn't. I think there are three quarterbacks I love, and I'll take any of them.
So you had Deontay way above, like AJ Brown, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb.
Not way above, but I think I felt better about him. Yeah, just because the target floor is so good.
You have three quarterbacks. Is there not four?
No. I'll go Josh Allen. I really wanted to go Herbert.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. I have absolutely no stacking in this.
I don't think I do. Oh no, I guess I have Najee, Deontay, and Swift. I stacked the game with a 42.5 point total. What a dummy! Man. This is what happens when your internet's bad. You stack terrible games.
Well, hey, you're beating everyone by almost 10 points in projections here. So,
well, shout out to Sam House, Jordan Sharp, all the number fire projection team for making me look better, look like less of a dummy. I'm gonna ignore my team here briefly and go to JJ's first. You did go with Justin Herbert there. You mentioned not a lot of correlation. You do get the Zeke Cordarrelle stack, and I think that one, especially the Cordarrelle being a wide receiver in snake drafts, he's a running back on the salary cap, but being a receiver in the snake draft, I think that made that a pretty easy decision, honestly.
That's good to hear because I didn't know. I mean, I just feel like at the wide receiver position, part of the reason I went Devontae and that you were thinking about going Devontae is I think that he's just such a safe and obvious option at the 101 at the wide receiver position. And then there's just this giant cluster, in my opinion. I mean, you can go at least a lot of different directions, and you wouldn't be shocked if, a CeeDee Lamb outscores a Mike Evans, or if a AJ Brown has a big game. You just wouldn't be that surprised if that happens. And so I didn't really know what direction to go with wide receiver. So I just decided to game stack and get at least some correlation, which is why I went Patterson there. And then the Fournette pick, I know that it might not have been the chalkiest pick whenever I took him there, but I wanted 3 running backs given the way this slate sort of breaks down. And Tampa Bay's has a high implied team total. Chris Godwin might not play. It wouldn't be shocking if we see them at least down by the goal line, especially go with a little bit more of a run heavy approach than they typically do if Godwin is indeed out. So I think Fournette is still in a decent spot this week, despite the fact that, it does, the matchup does dictate a more pass heavy approach. I actually like that game a lot though. I mean, both teams can't stop the pass. I could see a lot of throws in that game and I could see the over hit. So I really just went for the environment for Fournette above all else.
Yeah. And I think that Fournette's role is really good. He gets targets too, so maybe he gets 1 or 2 extra with Godwin being banged up and Brown and Gronk out. So I think that grades out pretty well there. The Patterson one gets you 4 running backs in a 3-person format. I think that's tremendous. I think that's optimal personally. Let's go to Brandon here. You did get Dak and stacked him with CeeDee Lamb. Like that for sure. Thoughts on your lineup here? You also had the game stack for the Chargers and Vikings.
Yeah. Even in a 3-person draft, you still want that correlation whenever you can get it. So that ultimately is why I went with Eckler over Christian McCaffrey. So, I had Taylor 1, Najee 2. From there, it was, between the 3 running backs that we were discussing. So that was fairly easy overall. But then I felt confident enough with James Conner's role within this offense to take him as my 3rd pick. And then I was kind of surprised. I had Dak higher than it sounds like you guys did. I thought JJ was considering Dak.
I should have. In hindsight, I should have. Yeah.
I think it was the easiest sort of quarterback to stack in the snake draft format because he had CeeDee Lamb along with him. So I feel really good there. And DK Metcalf, I know the projection's not that high, but his role is awesome. Russ has been awesome when he's healthy, and the reports sound like Russ is very close to 100%. So I really feel good with this team, and I know the projection's low, but it is my turn to win, and I feel like this team has
it's good. It's a good
this team has the potential just to win this week.
Yeah, when you pop a 40 burger from DK on Sunday, like it's gonna be game over, man. Like it's there's no point. So I think that will work out pretty well for you. As far as mine, I hate my team because like it's just so many bad offenses, which is so like counterthetical to my process. I know it's less of a sin in like a 3-person format. I understand that, but you can't stop me from self-loathing. So stop trying. I'll just put it that way. I think with the guys, I mean, like it's going to be a lot of usage. I think with Deontay, I don't regret that one. I think I made the right choice there. Swift, maybe I should have gone, with Dearness Johnson potentially instead. But like, I don't know. It was gross. Fine with it. Either way. I will see how it plays out. Again, Brandon's guaranteed to win. So what's the point?
Sounds like me talking about my teams usually.
I mean, yeah. Well, again, I don't get to win for 2 more weeks. So like I can be negative here. A little negative.
For what it's worth, my top 9 running backs, because I think that there was like some iffiness towards the bottom, but my top 9 running backs ended up being the 9 running backs that were drafted.
Okay, so that's interesting because I wouldn't have put Fournette in that top 9 because I was trying to list it out because you said you had top 9. I was trying to figure out what the top 9 were, but like, I think it makes sense. I just, for some reason, my mind didn't really think of him in that moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair. I think Fournette is sort of in like the Connor tier. Like I think that Connor, you still run the risk of them utilizing Benjamin more than we expect. I'm not saying that that's like the probable outcome, but it's a possible outcome.
Oh yeah.
Where last week we just saw Connor see the field as much as he did because they didn't want to just give the rock to a 3rd-string running back that hadn't seen many reps, right?
Yeah.
So I think that there's at least some risk there. Fournette's just sort of like a solid play. He's not like super sexy, and they should score a lot of points. That's why I had him in that tier.
Yeah, for sure. What were you saying, Brandon?
I feel like Jim would classify Leonard Fournette as sexy though. He's like he's like Lenny's biggest fan.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Sunday afternoon, Lenny. Let's ride. Okay, let's go to our questions here. Once again, you can get your questions in no matter where you're watching, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, or Twitter. We'll take them from all places. Grim Fan is saying, my internet's bad. Must be Comcast or dial-up. It's Airbnb Wi-Fi. I'm in Seattle for a wedding, so we'll blame it on the Airbnb here. I would never throw my beautiful Verizon Fios under the truck here. Let's talk to Tanantha. Who would you drop in half PPR in order to activate Michael Gallup? Okay, JJ, we're dropping Latavius, Pat Freiermuth, or Elijah Moore here?
Not Pat Freiermuth. Probably not Elijah Moore, because I'm going to just see if that upside sticks. I didn't love, we talked about this on the waiver wire show, Jim, but I wasn't like in love with Elijah Moore's usage this past week. I think that his production far outweighed that usage, but I still want to see if they utilize him more and if he can build off of it. Latavius Murray isn't going to be any sort of league winner. I mean, Devontae Freeman's actually looked pretty decent in relief of Latavius over the last few weeks. So, I wouldn't be shocked if like Freeman's the 1A when Latavius comes back even. So I would drop Latavius if you can after they already played.
Their ground game has been getting a lot better recently, and I think that could influence things to where they just stick with Devontae. If it's finally working, stick with the guy that's got you there. Joseph says he played Mike Gesicki last night, so he needs upside. Devin Singletary's in this one.
Colby.
Moss might play. I will say that. He's questionable. I think he did practice yesterday and today, so that one might happen. Ramondre is probably not going to play either. Tyler Johnson without Godwin, he actually might play too. So Joseph, you've broken, things broke bad for you in the injury report today, man. Like, you had a rough day. I'm sorry.
What about Brandon Bolton? If he's available, would you put him
over?
I'd play Beasley over. Let's just assume, because there's a lot of assumptions being made here, right? Zach Moss. Let's assume that Zach Moss plays. I think Zach Moss is actually trending because he was he's like progressing through the protocol properly.
Correct.
Let's assume that Zach Moss plays. Let's assume the New England Patriots running backs don't play, and then let's assume that. And who was the other one? Wasn't there one more? Let's assume that
Tyler Johnson.
Let's assume that Godwin doesn't play because he hasn't practiced. So I think he was limited today. I would probably just play Beasley then in that case.
Yeah, I mean, because Beasley projects for 7.5, 8 targets, whereas Johnson's probably 6.5 to 7. So I'd probably take Beasley there too. I'd agree.
Upside, baby, Cole Beasley.
Sorry, Joseph. You had a rough day today for injury reports. Apologies. Jack. Love the avatar still, Jack. Who would you rather roster? Kadarius Toney, Rondale Moore, Jamal Agnew? 2 high draft picks in the NFL draft this year, and then a guy who was a defensive back 12 months ago. Brandon, who do you prefer there for the rest of the year?
I'd go Kadarius Toney there. He has the best chance of being his team's top option. I love Rondale Moore. There's kind of some buzz that he might be like the Chase Edmonds replacement, but he's got a lot of competition there. So it's Toney for me pretty easily.
I'm going to stick with you, Brandon, here. Does Buffalo actually show up this week against the Jets? Also, if Moss is out, is Singletary a good play? We're assuming Moss is going to play, but hypothetically, let's say that he sits. How would you view Singletary and the Bills offense?
So the Bills are a bit kind of overrated. They have a lot of easy wins. Their offense has overperformed a good bit based on expectation. So I'm not saying that they're going to struggle. I do like the Jets plus the points this week. They should bounce back to some degree because it can't quite be as bad as it was last week. So I think they show up and
it's moving. It's moving in our favor.
I think they show from that standpoint. But yeah, even if Moss is out, again, this is a key distinction. If you need Devin Singletary in season long, absolutely play him. I'm in that situation. But when it comes to DFS, we just talked about all these great running backs this week. I don't think Devin Singletary really moves the needle from a salary cap format this week.
He'd be behind Ingram. I know we talked about Johnson and Connor mostly, but he'd be behind Ingram as well. DJ, would you stack Big Ben with Deontay Johnson and Pat Freiermuth or Brady and Evans? If this is a 1-to-1, I go Evans and Brady by a significant margin. I will say, though, that I think Brady does get a little bit downgraded if Godwin sits, because you look at the guys Brady has been most efficient throwing to this year. It has been Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Rob Gronkowski. He may be out 3 of those guys. So I would still consider Tom Brady for a salary cap format, but I think that is actually a downgrade for him as well. Let's talk to Grim Fan. What kind of value do Dearness Johnson, Leonard Fournette, James Conner, Mark Ingram, and Michael Gallup had this week, and starter sit Cortland Sutton this week? Brandon, we talked about everyone there outside of Michael Gallup, so I assume we answered this question for Grim Fan. But what about Gallup for you, Brandon? Are you considering Gallup at $5,500 this week?
Yeah, from a DFS standpoint, absolutely. Just because we need value at receiver, anything we can really get, and it sounds like if Godwin might play, then we lose Tyler Johnson. So there's not a whole lot of $5,000 receivers on FanDuel that we can look at. And as for start sit questions, I do publish the start sit column on Number Fire that goes through ranges of outcomes of each player and their odds for Sutton's case to be a top 24 receiver this week. He's in that mid tier. He's like a consider if needed this week. The Broncos are in a pretty good spot against the Eagles, so long as the Eagles don't drain the clock too much. But I don't think Cortland Sutton is a clear sit just because his market share has been a bit down. But again, that article just goes through like basically every relevant player, and you can kind of compare your options from there.
And at this time of year, I mean, Sutton's role is good enough to be in that consideration. So check out numberfire.com to get Brandon's full breakdown of who you'd be considering Sutton versus for this week. Okay, JJ, who we streaming here between Mac Jones, Trevor Lawrence, Baker Mayfield, Mike White against the best defense in football, or PJ Walker in a must-win week? Who are you going with there?
I mean, I don't really love this at all. Okay, I'm going to go with Matt Ryan first off. I see that in parentheses that you might be able to get Matt Ryan. He would be my choice if you're able to get Matt Ryan. Otherwise, do you guys?
No, you go Matt Ryan there. It's funny because I like Matt Ryan a lot. He's been amazing, but I feel like Jim wanted to like keep that quiet.
Oh no, I just didn't read that part. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't read inside parentheticals because I need to get through them fast, so I just skipped over it.
Matt Ryan's the best player of that group, but I think if you can't get Matt Ryan, I'd probably go Trevor Lawrence. I think I don't
Mac or really, Trevor Lawrence. I think.
Yeah, I don't feel that great about it, but I don't like the Cleveland New England game very much. I think the under hits in that game, and there's the chance that we just see, we're likely to see a negative game script for Jacksonville. That's not always a good thing for quarterbacks. I'm not saying that, but maybe we see a little bit more.
Lawrence is really might bad. See a little. Their pass defense has been terrible this year.
Right. We might see a little bit more scrambling from T-Law if they're able to get to that negative game script. So yeah, I'd go Lawrence. I don't feel that great about it though.
I think I would say the same. Okay, the Chosen Rows over on YouTube for you, Brandon. Emmanuel Sanders, Hunter Renfrow, Jerry Jeudy, Tim Patrick, or Christian Kirk. Who would you rank highest among that group? Manny, I feel like has to be number one, right?
I'd say Jerry Jeudy number one.
Oh, I didn't see Jeudy. Wow. Okay. Reading
It's start two, but my answer was Jeudy and Manny. Jeudy has a great role whenever he's healthy. Carved out the best workload since his two games since return. Week 1, they peppered him. His first game back, they just threw it to everyone, barely 3 to 4 targets for that entire team. But Jeudy for sure is my number one, and then followed by Emmanuel Sanders. 100 air yards per game the past 2 games coming out of the bye, just 35 receiving yards per game. Lots of opportunity. That should probably pay off this week against the Jets.
I do think Christian Kirk's a decent option for this week. I wouldn't put him above Jeudy or Sanders, but like with Hopkins trending towards likely being out again and Kyler potentially playing, Kirk is very much in play. But I'd put Sanders and Jeudy above him.
I don't even mind Renfrow in a season-long format either. I think that he's fine too. But yeah, I agree. Manny and Jeudy would be the two.
Okay, let's go here to Kyle, looking for some value at wide receiver. Do you like Marvin Jones for $5,900? We talked a bit about Marvin Jones on Thursday, Brandon, in the sense that we're okay with going at some Jags here, specifically Dan Arnold for the most part. But I think that Jones, despite the fact he's been out targeted by Arnold and Agnew, I still think that there's like a path to a ceiling there. I'd rather get above him to like Jeudy and guys like that. But what are your thoughts on Marvin Jones here?
Yeah, I would play Marvin Jones on FanDuel within game stacks. If you're playing Jonathan Taylor, maybe you like that game a little bit weird, like to get a little bit weird. You play Michael Pittman and Marvin Jones. I think that's in play. But yeah, Marvin Jones still has some upside. And I talked about that game more in detail on the Heat Check this week in terms of pace. And there might be some concerns that the Colts play from ahead and just grind clock, but that's not really how they've played. Even with a lead in the first half, they're still pretty pass heavy, about league average. They're slow overall, but they really get slower and more run heavy late in the game. So,
Yeah.
And then we actually see Jacksonville pretty fast and pretty pass heavy. So I feel pretty good with that one, but he's not the kind of play I would play in like a one-off situation. I would want some Colts in that game to make sure that there's enough to go around for Marvin Jones.
I'd agree with that as well. Okay, JJ, Shake and Bake 145 wants to know, do we play Dearness Johnson over Amari Cooper and Darrell Henderson? I think this is a really interesting question because it's not a slam dunk. What are you viewing here?
I think you got to play Henderson against San Francisco on Monday night. It's a decent matchup. He'll likely see the way that I sort of look at this kind of stuff too. If you're comparing running back to running back, think about the kind of workload in terms of backfield share and target share these running backs are going to see, which I would probably argue that Johnson and Henderson project for pretty similar backfield shares this week, just in terms of running back rush share and target share. And then associate that with the offense they're playing in, and the Rams have a better implied team total, and they're just sitting in a better spot than what the Browns do. So I would go Henderson over Dearness Johnson. I think you can make the argument for Dearness over Amari Cooper if you want a floor type play, but if it's a full PPR league like I'm seeing here, I do think Amari's probably still the play. But I say that without a lot of confidence because we don't know exactly what these target shares are going to look like with Michael Gallup back. I mean, it could be a little bit different. So I do think that Dearness Johnson is a safer play than Amari, but I'm looking sort of at the floor ceiling combo there. The fact that it's a PPR format, I'd probably still go Amari. I mean, I would still try to find a way though to get Dearness Johnson in your lineup.
Just get all three in there if you can. Bench someone else. I don't know. Figure it out. I think you can. Let's try to make that one work for sure. Grim fan, do you like to see the Packers defense this week? I do not because I think Russ is going to cook. I think DK Metcalf is going to go nuts. So I don't personally. I know they're lower salary, but I can't quite get there. Andrew wants to know if Cam will play this week. Sounds like he's probably not going to, based on what Matt Rule said. They might have a package, but like pretty limited. So I would not be going there, or I wouldn't expect him to play too much this week. DJ, considering they used the Steelers last week, DJ, I almost led you astray again. I don't know why you keep trusting me. Took the Colts this week. Thoughts? I think that works. I feel like 10.5 point favorites. The Jags are kind of feisty. They can. It's not a slam dunk, but I think that one's fine.
I don't love divisional games, but
go ahead.
No, I don't love divisional games for survivors, but that's the only kind of knock I have there.
Yeah. And the Jags are they're trying. That's good. Kyle, any chance that Jonnu Smith actually gets carries this week? Yes, I think so. I don't think
I was just going to say, it's one of those situations where yes, he could and probably will, but it's not super actionable. I think that oftentimes fantasy managers see headlines like that and they see coaches talk about that and they're like, oh, I got to throw him in my lineup. But sure, maybe it works out and anything can happen, but it would be shocking if Jonnu sees more than how many backfield touches do you think he'll see? 5?
13.
because of Belichick.
Jonnu or Travis Kelce? Jonnu or George Kittle? Where are we going? I think that's the realm we're talking about here. Okay, that is all that we have here for today on the Week 10 Snake Draft. As always, make sure you are subscribed on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, or Twitter pages. We are live here each and every weekday at 4 p.m., getting you set for either NBA on Wednesdays or NFL each and every other day. You can follow these guys on Twitter at Gdula13 for Brandon, and follow JJ on Twitter at Late Round QB. Brandon, I appreciate it. Good luck to you this week, and I'll talk to you once again on Monday.
Yeah, going to be a good one to recap on Monday morning, first thing.
It will be a fun one for sure. JJ, appreciate the time for you as well. I'll talk to you once again next week.
So yeah, have a fun wedding.
I will. It's going to be a lot of fun. We want to thank all of you as well for tuning in here to the Snake Draft and sending in your good questions as well. Good luck to you in Week 10 of the main slate. Brandon and I will be back with you on Monday to wrap it all up and recap the big takeaways from what should be a fun week of DFS. But until then, good luck. We'll talk to you once again on Monday. This has been the FanDuel Live Q&A.